participation, sometimes it's less. A lot of the times, if we have less participation, it's because people are really interested in what you have to say and they don't want to interrupt. So I'll keep my eye on the group chat and kind of like moderate things there. Hold on, there we go. So I'll keep my eye on that, so you don't have to worry about that. The only thing I don't have visibility on is if somebody messages you in the Zoom chat privately. But again, I'm not expecting you to monitor that during the chat or anything. Just know that I won't be able to see those messages, so I can't flag them for you. I don't know how often it happens, because like I said, I've only ever been the host on this. I've never been the guest, so I'm not sure how often you get a private message. But yeah, I'll keep my eye on that. We do prioritize the like conversational aspect. So if people are wanting to interact or wanting to, come off mute and participate, great, and I will handle that. I'll also make sure that we stay relatively on track for time, so you don't have to worry about that either. Let's see, we'll have the deck. I'll do a real quick housekeeping. I'll introduce you. I'll talk about a bit about Mindbody. Send everybody the link to follow them on our PowerToFly page if they want. Then we'll go over the questions real quick, and then I'll start reading them off the slides to you. So should be pretty good. We've got about a minute and a half before we're going to get started here. I've got us live on YouTube, so just so you're aware, this is now an open channel. And oh, do you have any objection? People usually ask us like how they can connect with our speaker. Would you like me to direct them to like your LinkedIn, or is there someplace else you'd prefer?
Yeah, LinkedIn would be great, because then that allows me to have more of a dialogue there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Okay, I just found your LinkedIn profile, so I'll save that to the stuff that I like copy and paste into the chat. All right, so like I said, it's 2:59. We're going to start here. I'm going to start us at 3:01 instead of 3 on the dot, just so we give people a chance to join, because there's another event that was happening immediately previous to this. So that way, in case we have any crossover, people have enough time to join. So yeah, where are you joining us from today, Maya?
San Luis Obispo, California.
Very nice. We've got, let's see, Mamta was one of the first people to join. She's in Irvine right now. So very cool to get some of our California contingent represented. All right, as we got people joining here, just checking in, and we'll get started here in about 45 seconds or so. So please feel free to, file in and make yourselves comfortable. I will go over some housekeeping items in a couple minutes. And so just hang tight for about another 30 seconds or so, and we will get started. Okay, let me hit record, and then we will be good to go. All right, so hi everybody, good afternoon, happy Tuesday. My name is Meg. I'm part of the marketing team here at PowerToFly. I'll be your host for this afternoon, and I am super excited to dig in on today's subject with our guest, Maya Weddle. So before we do that, I am going to go over a couple quick housekeeping items. If you've joined us for a chat previously, this will all sound very repetitive, so I apologize. But just to reiterate, all of our chat and learns, all of our virtual events, it is mostly and entirely about our community. It is about your participation. It's about making sure you guys get your questions answered, and you learn everything that you'd like to know from Amaya. So to that end, you are more than welcome to come off mute to add comments or questions as you like. You are also more than welcome to turn your cameras on if you'd like to. Don't feel like you have to be insta-perfect. Some of us are on day 3 of dry shampoo. So, no need to feel like you can't join if you don't want to, but there's no pressure if you feel like you would rather not be on camera. If you want to participate, but you don't have audio or video that's ideal for you or something, you are more than welcome to still participate by putting any comments or questions you have into the Zoom group chat. If you have a question that you would like to be raised anonymously, you are more than welcome to put it in the Zoom chat, but instead of sending it to everyone, you're going to pick that drop-down menu that has, you're going to use the drop-down menu to select my name, Meg Alexander. And that way you can send the message to me directly. I will make sure your question is raised and that you are kept anonymous. Last but not least, today is being recorded. So whether you are spending the first 5 minutes with us or you can stay for the entire hour, everybody that registers for today's event will get an email. It usually goes out in 1 to 2 business days with a link to rewatch the recording of this event. So you don't have to feel like you need to take copious notes or worry that you missed something. You can always go back and refer to it later. We're also live streaming to YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel at PowerToFly on the YouTube website. So if you want, you can also rewatch it there a lot sooner because it's just the live stream. It's before we have a chance to edit it and trim things and make it look all pretty. Last thing is, if you do want to come off mute and ask questions or comment or anything, please feel free to interrupt me. But if anybody else is speaking, or like our guest or another attendee or something, I love to be interrupted. I get paid literally to fill the space between conversations. So that's fine to interrupt me, but we just try not to talk over anybody else. Use your best judgment. Let's see here. I'm going to go flip to our next slide and introduce our guest, and then we'll go get through the rest of today's setup for today's chat and learn. So thank you to Amaya for joining us. Amaya has a PhD in human computer interaction and cognitive science from UC San Diego. She's spent the last 12 years working in research leadership roles in technology companies and is a listed inventor on over 45 tech patents. She is VP of Research and Product Marketing at Mindbody, where she leads a team of researchers and strategists who are helping build and launch technology to transform the wellness industry. So welcome, Maya.
Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here.
We are so glad to have you. I'll put contact information for Amaya in case you'd like to connect with her later. I'll throw that into the Zoom chat in a little bit. The other thing I do want to specify is that if you have any interest in Mindbody, you can follow them, their company page on PowerToFly. I will, again, put that link into the Zoom chat here shortly. You want to follow Mindbody, especially if you're interested in working for them, but they don't have maybe any open roles that would suit you at the moment. It is really a good idea to follow that company. You can do it for other companies that you're interested in on the PowerToFly site as well, but I absolutely recommend that you follow Mindbody. It is a great way to stay updated on their participation in events like today, our various virtual career fairs, or if they were to host a separate event outside of our Chat and Learn series. Following them is a good way to stay updated on new events like that. So I will throw the link up into the Zoom chat here in a minute. The last thing I want to call out before we get started is our questions. So if you are a super type A person and would like to know what's coming next, you're more than welcome to grab a screenshot of this page. We also have another slide that'll come in a couple seconds. Don't feel like you have to. It's just sometimes people appreciate knowing what questions are coming up. So that way, if they have a question that they want raised, either they can bring it up because it's not already covered in this questions list. I'm going to swap to the next slide right now. So feel free to take a screen grab here if you'd like it. But this way you'll know what questions are coming up, and that way if your question is already, somebody's already asked something similar, you can maybe add detail or add a comment around that time, or you can raise a question, like I said, if what you are about to ask is not covered in the questions that we have on deck for Amaya today. So without any further ado, I'm going to get us started here. So Amaya, one of the first questions we got was, how can you communicate to your current manager that you're interested in new trajectories within the company without causing conflict? I feel like this is probably a pretty universal question since not everybody feels as open and transparent about advancement and career advancement as maybe Mindbody or PowerToFly do.
Yeah, no, it's actually really interesting because I just had a one-on-one today with one of my team members who she asked me about moving into product management and expressing her interest in that. And she was a little reluctant to bring it up, but what I told her is how I approach any situation. As a manager, I feel like it's my job to really create development opportunities for my team members. And I've had team members leave my team because they wanted to go into another field. Of course, I'm bummed about it, and there's all kinds of practical implications to that. But in terms of having to find somebody else to replace them. But in general, as a manager, I'm really supportive with development. I think one way to bring it up to your manager, if you're interested in exploring new career trajectories, is to ask them formally to do what's called an IDP. It's an individual development plan, and so that can kind of create a nice like objective context for you to talk about where you want to be in 3 to 5 years. And it's great as a manager because then, when I know if my team member wanted to move into another field, although they're still doing this current job, I might give them different opportunities to stretch, or I might filter specific projects to them that I know are going to help align them to where they want to head next. So I would say ask for, will you do an individual development plan with me? A lot of companies have kind of like a standard template for that. I think it also looks great, like that you're asking your manager to help, please help me develop in my career. It just makes you look like you're really sharp and ambitious and engaged employee. So that's my advice.
That's a really good point to make is, if you're asking for ways that you can advance within the company, then obviously they know you're not looking to jump ship. You're just looking to keep moving up the ladder with this company. So yeah, I think that's a very good way to look at what may seem like a dicey question on its surface, but doesn't have to be scary. Yeah. If you're asking for career development, it should be something that they're interested in doing.
Absolutely. And there is kind of like a good above board protocol to follow. Like if, for instance, if you see another job opening in the company that's in another division or something that it piques your interest and you want to explore it, the first thing you should do is talk to your manager about it. Let them know that this is something you're interested in pursuing. And I think, any manager worth their salt is going to encourage you, or maybe even, give you some candid feedback about like, hey, you probably need a few more years of experience, but I'm glad to know that that's interesting or intriguing to you. So I think that first step you want to take is to speak with your manager. And then, they may even be really like willing to advocate for you to the hiring manager of that other role.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Is it that person can then, either give you constructive feedback on how much, the distance you need to cover between then and there, and then you can work on a plan of what you need to do, like, what you need to improve on or upskill or whatever. But yeah, I think that's a really good way to approach it. So thank you for that.
Sure.
All right, so this next question asks, when transitioning industries, what tips can you offer for positioning yourself on the job application? Aside from revamping a resume and adding a cover letter, what other ways do you suggest to position yourself for new opportunities?
Yeah, so I think that when you're looking to move into another industry, you really want to do a self-assessment and think about the kinds of skills that you built in one particular role and how you're going to apply them into the other. And it also can require you to do some rethinking of how you're describing past job experiences on your resume. I have an very interesting background. I actually have 2 degrees in chemistry, and I moved into the field of technology and research. And, it felt like it was a complete shift, but in a lot of ways, I'm still leveraging the skills that I developed in chemistry. And so it's beholden upon me to be able to articulate how I'm bringing those skills to the table. So one example is experimental design, right? And getting a background in hard sciences gave me a really good understanding of how to set up experiments, analyze data objectively, draw conclusions and support them, and then be able to explain them in a way that makes sense. I also developed quite a few skills just in teaching capacity. When you're getting a PhD, you often have to do TA work. So I'm having to explain really complex subjects to my students. And I use that skill every day in what it is that I do as a leader in a company. When I speak to the industry, when I speak to our customers about what we're learning at Mindbody or where we think the industry's headed, I'm using those skills of teaching, even in building my own team and teaching them how to do user research and other research techniques. So I think it's really important for you to be able to justify like how it is that you're going to leverage your background, or maybe what unique perspectives it might give you. I think like, for instance, if you wanted to move from marketing into like product or technology, like understanding how the marketing discipline works is a real strength. And so you want to be clear on that when you come into an interview, or even how you're describing yourself as a candidate in some of the applications.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to point out. And actually, to piggyback off of what Amaya had said, this is a situation where, as a former talent advocate for PowerToFly, I can tell you the stuff that we look for and most recruiters look for is kind of for things to be a little bit spelled out for you. So this is a really good place to call out, like on your LinkedIn, how there's like a header at the top. You can use that header to explain like that you're looking to change industries into, you know, from X into Y or whatever. If you don't want to make those kinds of moves real visible on something like LinkedIn, it's another good place to call out. There's an exact spot, I think it's called My Story or About Me or something like that in your PowerToFly profile. That is a really good place to call it out, because if I see like somebody that has an entire work history that's all about teaching and education, but then I see that, you know, they have certain skills that would apply to, you know, let's say lion taming, for example. I have no reason to think that they're going to want to leave that teaching lane for lion taming unless they were to call it out someplace. So, you know, trying to be as communicative as possible to make it super clear, whoever's looking at your various profiles, that this is where you're looking to move to. It definitely helps for recruiters, especially, to understand, well, don't bother her with teaching, you know, teaching opportunities, because she's not looking to stay in that lane. She's looking to go into something else.
Yeah, I think it also can add to like your personal brand or story if you're really clear on, you know, like, I'm a former chemist and now I'm doing research in the technology industry. Like that's unique, and it's a differentiator. And I think it makes your story really compelling. You just want to make it really clear your why as well. Like, why are you looking to move in? What's your why? And how does it all fit together into a cohesive story?
Yes, that is a very good point. And like I said, or like the person had asked, you know, it's not just about the job application, right? It's about your profiles. It's about making sure that everything that's out there that's findable about you is helping bolster and communicate what you're looking for and what skills you bring to the table on this. Okay, so this next question had asked, how can someone rebrand their personal brand to highlight their past experience, even when their career trajectory is headed in a new direction? So we sort of covered this a little bit, but can you maybe expand on that a little?
Yeah, I think that here you can actually talk about even a little bit more than potentially what might show up in your past job history. So an example of this is, you know, myself, I work in the wellness industry. I'm passionate about it. I'm a former college athlete. And I think that also is something that I would want to include in why am I wanting to work at Mindbody? It's not like, oh, I just want any research job. That's like the last thing you would want to convey, I think, in a job interview. It's like, I'll take anything, even if it's true. You want to make sure that you're pulling in aspects of your past history that kind of resonate or bolster your interest in a particular industry. So that's maybe a tip, is think about really holistically, even things like, you know, as a mom, what have you learned if you are a mom or an aunt, or like something in your own personal history that may be in line with a specific field or job that you're interested in.
I think that's a really good thing to point out, and a good way to kind of think outside the box when it comes to what your personal brand actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for our next question, this person had asked, how do you know which skills and talents to highlight when you aren't clear about what your next career step might be?
I'd say for this one, you should spend some time getting clear on what your next step is. I think it makes it very hard for you to come across as a strong candidate if you don't have in your own mind, you haven't sort of set out like, what are you looking to do or achieve? Even if it's not about like, you know, I want to work as a researcher at Mindbody, you know, even if it's like my next step is going to be in product management, or I want to work in the education space. I do think it's really important for you to be clear on your your next step in your career. I'm a strong believer in the power of attraction. And so in spending time thinking about, like, there's tons of ways to do this. Simon Sinek has the Find Your Why activity book. There's vision boards, which I'm a big lover of vision boards, where at the beginning of the year, I kind of create, like, what do I want my 2020 to look like? Because time and time again, I'm finding that I'm attracting this into my life. And so you need to be clear about where you want to be so that you can, align and figure out, like, okay, how am I going to make that happen? If you're just sort of searching around aimlessly, it's going to make it really hard for you to come across as somebody who's not just wishy-washy about that specific role. And it gives you kind of a foundation of passion to speak to, like, I want this job. I know it's the right step for me. I'm excited about it. I've spent time thinking about it. And it also gives you a context to evaluate a bunch of opportunities against, where you can have that hard conversation with yourself. Like, I said I wanted to be doing this, and this job isn't aligned with that. I said I wanted to spend more time with my family and maybe take it down a few notches, and this job is going to, like, kill me. I really shouldn't go for it, even though it sounds exciting on the surface. So I say flip the script here and get clear on your why and what you want to do next, and then all of that stuff will fall in place.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good approach to take to it, especially since if you don't know what your strengths are, maybe, or if you're not sure what direction you want to go in, evaluating something like taking a look at your current skill set and including in that skill set list your soft skills can really help clarify for you maybe what direction that you would be more suited in, or at minimum, it can help you clarify what directions you don't want to go in, which, like we talked about, will keep helping you narrow your focus so that you are, expounding your energy in the right channels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's a lot of different ways you can do that. There's a lot of supportive materials. I mentioned a couple of them, but there's things you can do that are free. It's really just creating some space for yourself to reflect and think about where do you really want to go, using both your left and your right brain.
Very good call out. Thank you for that, Amaya. All right, so this person wrote in saying, according to the age-old conundrum, no job without experience, no experience without a job, what is the best way to overcome what seems to be kind of a catch-22?
Yeah, this is a tricky one. It's the chicken and egg kind of problem to solve. I think one of the techniques you can use is to really think about your past experiences and how they may align with the job that you want to move into or the field that you want to move into. And then to really seek out stretch opportunities for you. If this is where it's nice to have that manager kind of in line with what your goals are, because they can help facilitate some of those opportunities, or just make sure that your work is being prioritized, and that's okay. I'll give an example. In my career at Mindbody, and this is kind of what spawned the whole idea of this, like, lateral movement. So I've been at Mindbody I had been at Mindbody for about 4 years, and realizing I didn't have a whole lot of upward mobility. The challenge I was facing is that this company is in San Luis Obispo, which is an amazing place to live. I didn't want to move elsewhere. My family loves it here, but I wanted to continue progressing in my career. I couldn't go up. We didn't need any more high level of research management and oversight, but I saw a peripheral field that was really interesting to me. It was a little more creative, still using analytical skills, but it was something that I was excited to do. And I had found myself sort of dabbling in a little bit more in my role, which is product marketing. And so I didn't have any experience in product marketing, but it was through my interest that I've expressed to my manager, my abilities as a leader, a team leader. So I knew that I could build and create a strong team. I had done that with research, and I had a track record. And then it was through a series of stretch projects where I could go back to my manager, who was also the hiring manager for this product marketing role, and say, hey, I did these stretch projects, essentially go-to-market campaigns. I really want to take this on. I really want to have this team underneath my collective group. I think we'll be great together. Give me a chance. Here's a 30, 60, 90-day plan of what that transition would look like. And he gave me the opportunity because of all of that. So I think that it's a lot about, creating opportunities for yourself in your current role, maybe side projects. You could also do volunteer work is a really good way to do it. And being able to advocate for yourself and what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, that's a very good reminder. I think a lot of people don't think about stuff like their soft skills when they're tallying up the kinds of experience that they actually have. But when you're looking for that transferable experience, if there's none in your actual job or in your career history, yeah, going outside to, either stretch projects with your current company or volunteering is a great option, because that way you can kind of get the best of both worlds, right? Where you get that experience while you're still working.
Mm-hmm. With a lot of entry level roles, team members maybe don't have on the job experience, but things I look for in candidates that are joining our team is, have they done something like that in college? Like maybe they ran social media for one of the organizations that they were a part of, and I know that they can bring those skills to the table. I think I also am a big believer in when you need to, having a portfolio online for certain projects. I think a lot of times people think of portfolios as something for like a design student or an art student, but you can create portfolios that talk about projects that you've done, that you've overseen. As a researcher, you could have a series of research projects that you've done. And as long as you can sort of, even if they aren't in a business context, but you can sort of justify how they would be very applicable or very similar to what would be done in a business context, I think that's another good way to show your experience, even if you don't have it in a professional setting yet.
Yeah, that's perfect. And plus it gives you another opportunity to, like we keep talking about, like kind of over communicate and make sure that what you're looking for or why you think you are best for this role is very clear. You're trying to make it so that all those dots are connected on, like, before the recruiter even looks at what you've got, what you're presenting them. And that way it's as easy as possible for the recruiter to really see you in that role, or for the hiring team to really see you there. All right. So this next question asks, for someone who has been out of the workforce for several years, how can they show a future employer that their skills are still relevant? And I think this is going to be probably a more and more common question as we see people that have been laid off due to COVID and have had, breaks in their employment because of that. But I think this specific instance looks like it's thinking a little bit longer term than that, or longer range than that.
Yeah, I think that it's important for you to be able to justify that your skills are relevant. A lot does change very rapidly, very quickly. So, one idea would be maybe you want to update your skills and have some kind of certification. So as you're starting to ramp back up and go back to work, you could look to get a certification in something that's like a very up and coming, or sort of indicates like, hey, I've brushed up my skills. They are fresh. I do think as a woman leader that I wouldn't look askance at somebody who had told me they took off a few years to be a mom and now they're looking to get back into the workforce. I think I've even seen people put that on their resume. I think that's actually an awesome way to describe it. And then they talked about all the skills that they did as a mom, which is really, really cute. But also, like, they were making those skills relevant in this context. So those are a couple strategies you may want to use, just making sure that you can sort of show the proof in the pudding that your skills are relevant, and be able to show either, maybe some portfolio examples, maybe you had some recent certifications, and then, just being able to really advocate for yourself. Any other thoughts, Meg? Oops, am I frozen? Oh no. Is Meg frozen or am I frozen?
We can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, not Meg though.
Meg's frozen. You never know. You're like, who am I talking to? There she is.
There we go. I'm sorry, guys. It froze, and I thought it was on Amaya's end, not mine.
I know, we were just laughing. I was like, am I frozen or is Meg frozen?
Oh no, it's me. All right, let me get back in here and share my screen. There we go. All right, so when I lost you, you were talking about calling out your soft skills and also talking about like what you'd done in the interim that would be informative for this next job. My only call out when I thought you guys were all frozen and not me was to also look at things like continuing education courses. If maybe your skills are a little bit dusty or there's been new advancements, then you can point to something like a continuing education course, or I've attended webinars on this, and this to make sure that I'm keeping up with industry trends or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's so many ways to get involved in things like that. There's so many conferences that you can be a part of, speaking, like either as a student or even in a speaking capacity. I think that all of those things just show that you're continuing to engage with the professional community. I think, I don't think it's something you have to like spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do. I don't want people to feel like they're compelled to do that when money might be tight or whatever. Like even showing that you've taken some Coursera classes or something like that, I think is valuable.
Yeah, and thank you for specifying that, because I think you're right. That's a really good thing to specify and stress, especially now when you might have a break in your work history because you've been laid off or whatever's happening, but don't feel like you have to keep throwing money at the problem if that's not really something that's comfortable for you to do for your budget. All right, so this next question asks, how can someone overcome human roadblocks to climb the corporate ladder? Should they look to leave the company for bigger opportunities, or is this a situation where you really need to like work around what's already in place?
Yeah, I think that I don't think there's really a right answer for this. I think it's something you have to evaluate for yourself, depending on the situation. I've been at Mindbody for 6 years, and we've gone through so many organizational changes that every single time has presented some kind of an opportunity. And there have also been times when I felt really stifled by, potentially like where I was reporting, a manager that didn't feel super supportive or get me. It could be like some weird political thing happening. And luckily it's like the weather the weather in New England. I just waited a few minutes and then it changed. So, I was able to, I think, take advantage of those organizational changes. And I also gave the story of my own personal history of Mindbody of moving laterally in order to kind of move up or to take on additional roles and responsibilities. And so that's another thing that you can do where I could have at that juncture, I could have chosen to move on maybe to a bigger company where there's more upward mobility for me available, or maybe to a different role that had more like a higher title, higher salary, or more oversight. And I chose to stay with the company that I really loved, and I wanted to stay in this town. So I think that's another strategy is, can you move laterally? Could you take a new role on that's going to engage your brain and challenge you and make you excited to come into work every day?
That, like you talked about, that lateral move idea can also be really helpful if you're looking to maybe change industries or change your role within the field. Like we talked to a lot of people that are looking into either to get into marketing or to get into coding. And it's one of those situations where those departments can be found in a lot of different industries, or like the departments can be found in companies in a lot of different industries. And so if you're looking to move into something that maybe your company doesn't have a department for that, something like a lateral move that would bring you closer to learning those skills that you would need to then jump to a different industry would be a really smart way to do it, because that way you kind of still have the safety and security of the role that you're currently in or the company that you're currently with, but you can still kind of work towards that goal without having to, take on a side hustle or, go to school while you're also working and in the middle of a pandemic. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. So for our next question, this person asks, what remote networking tips can you share for those looking to make a career transition?
Yeah, this was an interesting question because I was thinking about it and realized like many of my even not in a pandemic, many of my networking experiences have been remote. One of the things that I've really had fun doing is just reaching out to other people in the industry to learn more about how they're running their team. That's something that, as a research manager, but this would apply to anybody who's like, how are we overseeing competitive intelligence? Like, how do you do that at your company? I'd love to just hang out with you, get together. We could do a 1 hour call and kind of share best practices. This is the kind of thing that I have a really hard time finding like anything written up or any content about. Like, it's really this like nitty gritty day in, day out stuff about the trade that you really have to just talk about in person. It's like those dirty secrets behind the wall or something. And so I found it's really effective to just reach out on LinkedIn to people that maybe have a similar career profile to mine, or they work at a company that's one that I admire, to just learn more about. And people are really, I think they're really happy to talk about themselves and what they're doing and what they figured out in their role. And they're also really, that piques their interest to hear from you as well. Like, you have things that you can share and offer to that conversation. So I'd say definitely reach out to people on LinkedIn. Make sure that you're framing it in a way so I think they can tell by your profile that you're not like doing, the telemarketer thing, which is now like so popular in LinkedIn. It drives me insane. I'm like, should I become your friend? I don't know. Yup, there's the sales pitch. I shouldn't have done that. But anyway, yeah, I think that's a good technique, and it's one that I've found super insightful and valuable as I've been building out teams in various roles.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to post the link in the chat here to a chat and learn that we had a couple months ago, and it was literally about like templates you can use to land anything from an intro to an interview, and it was post-COVID, and so it's a really interesting chat if anybody else is like similarly curious on some of these remote networking tips. They talk a lot about how you're trying to develop these relationships with people so that in developing this network, it's not just you're kind of cold emailing somebody and saying like, hey, can I pick your brain? Hey, can I, take 5 minutes of your time? Hey, can I have whatever? Instead, they talk about and really make it understandable how you can accomplish the same idea, but do it in a way that engenders a relationship with that person so that you can use them or they can use you going forward as, maybe a sounding board, or maybe, however the relationship might develop from there. So that can be really helpful for people, especially myself, who are used to doing networking in, a face-to-face capacity. Despite the fact that I've worked remotely for 1.5 years, I'm still used to doing that networking, in real life. And, until we know how much longer we may or may not be able to do that, I think it's helpful to learn these skills that would help us be able to keep continuing with networking, even while things are still very uncertain.
Yeah, and the other idea I'll throw out there is if you lead a team, you can do team networking. So we've done that as a research team. Like, we called up the SurveyMonkey research team, and we were all on the phone with each other, all talking about various areas of coverage and various questions that we might have had. It was really, really fun and exciting, and it gave us all like instantly a bunch of network connections.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've done a couple ask and answer or ask and offer sessions here as like sometimes they've been more industry focused and sometimes they've been more general. But it's a nice way to start meeting people, because not only can you say like what you're looking for help with, but you can also come to the table with, and here's the skills I have that could help somebody else. So it feels like a more organic way to make those networking connections, as opposed to, hi, I'm so-and-so, please help.
Yeah, please help me. You have an hour of yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got one question that was submitted in the chat here. Tori says, I'd love if Amaya could elaborate on the concept of moving laterally to move up. In what cases might this be helpful? I'm considering moving from engineering to a marketing or growth team within my current company. It could mean a pay cut at first, but I'm hoping I'll be able to advance my career quicker in the long haul because of my stronger personal strengths and motivations in that area. Do you have any advice or thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of times a lateral move might mean a pay cut, and I'll give an example of someone on my team now. She was working in kind of a partner marketing capacity, and she wanted to move into product marketing, and so she had to come in at a lower level just because she didn't have the experience on her resume, which for that role, that higher level senior role. We couldn't, we can't justify giving somebody a senior title without that experience, especially when you think about we have other people on the team that are also senior. So she did take a bit of a pay cut. However, since joining our team, she's so experienced in her profession and she's so skilled in so many ways, like in terms of being able to present herself, advocate, form relationships in the company, that she's moved up really, really quickly, and she's going to be promoted imminently to senior at a much faster trajectory. So I would say that, like, sometimes you do have to take a pay cut, and objectively it makes sense. Like, you just don't have those skills. But if it's something that you love doing, I mean, that goes so much further than money. At the end of the day, being passionate about what you're doing, being excited and turned on and engaged, it's so rewarding inherently. You're going to do a better job. You're going to be more willing to go that extra mile. So I think that's all really important to keep in mind too, that the rewards we get from work are more than just financial.
I think that's a good thing, like you said, a good thing to remember. But so on the flip side of that, just to play a little bit of devil's advocate here, as somebody who has also made a couple lateral moves and taken either pay cuts or not pursued, taken either a pay cut or taken a plateau in pay, basically. Are there any guidelines for how to then try and rectify that lost income? Because I know that women not negotiating in job interviews or in promotion discussions or something like that is a large part of the reason that most women are underpaid. So do you have any tips for somebody who maybe makes that lateral move and then has to go back and fight, or at least reassert where they need to be monetarily later on? I mean, is this a situation where you can say, yes, I got the training that we discussed that I would need, so now we need to discuss about, my compensation?
Yeah, absolutely. And this woman that I just gave you the example of, she did proactively have that conversation. I had already started to put in the process because I could see how much she was accomplishing and achieving. She was doing senior level work. And so I wanted to be sure that we retained her and that she was being recognized for that contribution. But she also brought it up to me before I had the opportunity to share it with her. And she advocated for herself. I think that it's really good to get clear on whether there's some kind of career ladder or job competencies that will allow you to really articulate why it is that you're performing at a level that, maybe you're returning from, you went from senior to mid-level and now you're going back up to senior. Get really clear on what it means to be senior and how the company defines it, and then be able to map what it is that you've accomplished recently to that senior level work, and then drive that conversation. When you take on a new role, you can also ask in that conversation when you're being hired to be evaluated in 6 months. I'm going from senior to mid-level. I'd like to be assessed at senior level in 6 months, and then bring that conversation up at that point. So that's another strategy you can use is to kind of agree to be assessed at that midpoint.
And I think that's a good way to call it out too, because you're asking to be evaluated at a higher standard. It sounds, or at least to my mind, it would feel less of an ask for money, as it would feel more like you were just asking to be, help continue advancing your skills because you want to be judged on that higher level. So
yeah, I don't think a manager would be surprised to hear that. If someone were coming in, I'm moving from a senior director role into a director role. I really want to learn this new discipline, and I want you to hold me to a high standard. I want to be back up to senior manager in 6 months. So can you please help me get there and help evaluate me at that point? And be candid with me if I'm not there yet. So I think that's something to think about as well.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you, Tori, for that wonderful question. And thank you, Amaya, for giving us that lovely deep dive. All right, so this person had asked, how can we add value to a company and level up our own skills while avoiding clashes with different people from whom we need help? For example, often creative people clash with more technical people, but that might be the skill set you're trying to learn.
Let's see. Avoiding clashes with, yeah, I think I would want to dive in a little bit more about the clashing part. And understand,
okay, so
like,
if anybody that submitted this, if the person that submitted this is on the line, please feel free to either come off mute to add context, or you can type it into the Zoom chat. All right, so let's start with, maybe we'll break this down into a couple pieces. If you're talking about common clashes between teams, is there a way that you recommend navigating that, especially if maybe you came from a team, if you're making one of those lateral moves and you came from a team that clashes with the team you're moving into?
Yeah, I could see some clashes that come from, let's say I wanted to learn more about social media. And so I started, being more engaged in social media, or maybe speaking up about my opinions about the social media strategy of the company, like when it's not my role. That would definitely cause a clash. And I think that a good way to navigate that would be to maybe set up time or meet with somebody who's doing a role or function that you're interested in, and let them know that you're interested, and ask to shadow them or learn more about it, so that they understood your frame of reference. You don't want to come across as threatening. I think that's where I'm digging in a little bit on the clashing part. I'd say some of the greatest training I've gotten in leadership is really about understanding different communication styles. And so that gives you the ability to sort of navigate between lots of different communication styles of people, and learn how to, speak to them in the way that they can better connect with you and understand and hear, and really developing a flexibility and being able to yourself navigate between different communication styles, I think is a really powerful skill. So that's maybe something that can help with avoiding clashes too, is just beginning to learn that people have different ways of communicating, and approaching problems. And so finding the way to connect with them will help you become more influential in your role.
Okay, so then to sort of maybe address, without any context, it's hard to tell, but to maybe address the bulk of this question, then this person also asks about adding value to a company and leveling up your own skills. So would you say that this is a situation where if there's no real stretch project like you talked about previously that already exists, that maybe it's a good idea to position or propose your own? Or is this a situation where it would be smarter to go to your boss and say, here's what I'm trying to do. Is there a path forward for me doing this at the company?
Yeah, I think the best strategy, and maybe your boss is like super hands off and they really could care less, but I think a good strategy is to make sure that your boss is aware of your long-term goals, and understands your desire to potentially take on new or different types of projects, so that they can be in alignment with it. I think if I found out as a boss that my team member was like participating in all of these different activities, I would be concerned, because I'm responsible for resourcing my team members to projects that are in line with what my leadership team wants me to be doing. So if your boss knows, like, hey, my ultimate goal is to pick up more skills in social media, then I can even help facilitate maybe connections in the company, or find out opportunities that I might hear about myself, but definitely be okay with, hearing about that person being involved with some other team. And then just one other point I'll throw out there is that there are a lot of opportunities within companies to do different types of projects that aren't necessarily, they're more about company morale, or maybe it's about some kind of company mission, to do, like, be better at environmental policies within the company, or support work-life balance, or advocate within specific affinity groups. Like Mindbody has a whole bunch of different affinity groups. So those also provide opportunities to potentially do something new or different. You could be responsible for social media for an affinity group, even though you're doing something totally different in your role. But it's within the auspices of the company. So that's another way to look for different types of ways of stretching and adding value.
That's a really good point that I hadn't thought about, was, like you said, like pursuing these opportunities within affinity groups as opposed to trying to stay focused with like the actual teams at your workforce. So we've got a comment in the chat that says, in clashes that I have witnessed between technical folk and creatives, and the latter gaining skills, so creatives getting skills from technical folk, it's about learning about the technical baselines for projects and demonstrating a respect for that before offering suggestions. I've also seen technical folk blow off explaining technical baseline choices that impact what can and cannot be designed or developed with this or that feature. And I think that's a really good call out, because like if you go into a new situation and you're trying to learn and you're excited about it, but you don't know some of the ground rules or some of the, really like entry level things or baseline things as this person terms it, it can be really easy to kind of put your foot in your mouth or suggest something that doesn't work. Like you come in and you're like, but what if the pigs flew? And they're like, but they can't fly because they're pigs. So, that might be a very good opportunity, like you had said, to call out and use those communication skills to make it clear that you are here to learn, you're really excited about that, you'd like to help, but here's what your baseline of knowledge is. Is there is there some extra homework that you need to do to get yourself up to speed, or somebody that you can sit down and talk to over like a lunch break or something to get yourself on a better footing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of influential power that can come from understanding what that other person is trying to achieve, like, or accomplish, and being able to position how what it is that you're doing or adding is going to help that be accomplished or achieved. So that's something we talk a lot about, and we do some training in influence where, I have people in the design field that are like, but this is what's right for the user. It's like, okay, then we have to translate that into what the product manager wants, which is what's best for the bottom line. You can still translate what's best for the user into what's best for the bottom line, but you sort of have to connect the dots instead of creating like those clashes. So do the work of translating.
Yeah. The person that also commented made a very good point, that you can have good intentions about bringing up these new ideas, but it can really easily like kind of blow up and create tension between clients and your workforce, especially if what you're suggesting isn't really feasible or won't work for various reasons that might be clear if you knew more, but you don't. So whatever. So very important to read the room when you're making these kinds of suggestions, but it's also a situation that you could pretty much prevent by starting with that internal, not clearing of the air, but more of I heard a previous Chat and Learn guest refer to it as the State of the Union, where they come in, especially if you're taking leadership of a new team, where you come in and say like, hey, we're all on the same team and I'm really excited to help you guys with blah, 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 and here's what it is. But yeah, like creating that open communication on an internal side before you try and maybe step in it inadvertently in front of like a client or an outside contractor.
Yeah, and this is one thing I'll add, just related to I think moving into new fields and professions. It's important to understand that it's almost like it's just like moving into another culture in some ways. There's a whole host of implicit and tacit things that go along with how that work is done that you may not be able to pick up through a book. And so, I have a background in anthropology. Part of my degree was about studying anthropology. And I think that it served me well to think about, hey, what's kind of the subculture here? And like, okay, in this new developer world, people are very worried about these series of things, and this is how we communicate, and this is what's considered to be a reasonable suggestion, or maybe I should ask questions instead of coming in with like a point of view immediately. So learning kind of that new subculture is a really important phase to go through, and just recognizing that you're gonna have to be a bit of a novice for a while as you pick that up.
I love thinking of it as a subculture too. That's really a good way to look at it, because you're right. You can avoid a lot of conflict if, instead of saying like, I have this idea, let's try this. If you instead position it as, hey, like, is there a reason you guys aren't doing it this way? Or is there a reason this avenue hasn't been pursued?
Help me
that I'm not
understand
seeing?
what you were thinking about here. Yeah.
All right, so I see we've only got 8 minutes left. This always goes too quickly. So I'm going to try and get to the rest of these questions before we go. But in case you have a question in mind and you were hesitant to ask it, please feel free to come off mute and ask, or to throw your question into the chat if you'd like it answered before we run out of time today. All right, so this person had asked, what advice do you have for moms with little to no childcare options? Should they be looking for part-time or remote work right now?
Yeah, this is crazy times that we're living in right now, where we have all kinds of interesting coworkers in our backgrounds. I think it's something that you would have to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. People have different ages of children. They have different levels of family or spouse support. If looking for a part-time job is better right now because of the constraints on childcare that COVID is putting on all of us, I definitely think that there's ways to discuss that or justify that within a resume if people are concerned about moving from full-time to part-time. This is an unprecedented time, and I think that might be the right thing to do for some people. So I wouldn't profess to know like universally how to give advice here, but just to say, evaluate your own situation, evaluate what it is that you're looking to do with your career, and whether it makes sense to move or shift due to these crazy times.
I mean, honestly, I think that's pretty solid advice. Like, I know that you're right. It's very hard to speak in generalities when it comes to a situation that can be so unique and so nuanced from person to person and family to family. But you're right. I mean, we are in very unprecedented times, but it's still as true as it ever was that in a job interview situation, you are interviewing the company just as much as they are interviewing you. So if you're interviewing with a company and you are being very, transparent and forthright about your needs, from a professional as well as a personal standpoint, if you're being upfront about what you would need to be able to be successful in this role, and they're not supportive of that in the middle of a pandemic, like, that probably gives you a pretty good indicator of whether or not this is a supportive and uplifting company to work for anyway. Obviously there's caveats to that kind of judgment as well, but it's important to make sure that in any situation you are going to be well served by working at this company, because you are the only person looking out for what's best for you and your family. So making that a priority then puts you in more of a powerful position, as opposed to like trying to get what you want from a company that may or may not give it to you. It puts you in a better situation to be able to say like, look, this is a great opportunity, but it's not great in these terms. So yeah, I can help you maybe know how to call that out and how to address it within each individual role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and luckily, more and more companies are moving to remote, and we're hearing more and more tech companies are saying like, oh, we're going to be remote from now on. Like, there's a lot of benefits to remote and having a remote workforce. It widens your hiring pool. I think it's a differentiator for companies to be able to offer remote. There's definitely like bottom line benefits to businesses not having to pay like crazy high salaries of Silicon Valley, because people live in areas where a lower salary is actually great. So I'm excited. This new dawn has finally come. I enjoy working from home. Personally, it's been wonderful. I see my kids more than I have like my whole working career, and it's been super rewarding. So yeah, I'm glad that this transition is finally happening.
Absolutely. We've been saying this needs to happen for years. So it's sad that this is what brought us here, but we're going to make hay while the sun's shining. We're going to try and get as many people as we can to understand that the workforce doesn't need to look the way it used to. The workforce doesn't even need to look the way it has for the last 5 to 10 years. Like, it's that idea of more flexibility and more time options is not just good for the workforce, it's good for the employers too. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to know. All right, so this other person had asked, how can someone balance showing that they are both passionate and professional to a future employer?
I think those things are they have a lot of synergy. I'll go back to what I started with, where I was talking about finding your why. And if that role that you're interviewing for is in line with what the future you want to create, the passion just kind of comes naturally. I think the times when I've had candidates that are really dispassionate, I think it's because they didn't really care that much about the vision of the company, or like they didn't kind of get it. And it sort of shows in how they approach themselves. And the ones that are really like, telling me like, I love Mindbody, I use it as a consumer, and I, really want this role because I can do all of these things and here are my professional skills. I think that you can't fake it. You just can't. Get clear on your why and find roles that align with that. And then you can be both passionate and professional.
Thank you for specifying that. I think you're right. I feel like we tend to think of multiple skill sets or multiple characteristics as somehow contradictory or mutually exclusive, when they don't necessarily have to be. It can be a situation where you have this great passion and are really, really invested in this company, but you can also, use that to, like you said, like kind of power the professional moves that you make in a way that gives them a little bit more impact than they might have had previously.
I'll just add sorry about the echo. I'll add one more nuance to that about passion. While I think sometimes passion can come across as a little bit egotistical. And so that's one thing you may want to be mindful about when you're positioning yourself. As a candidate, you always want to be talking about what you can add to the organization. And so if you can add your passion to what you bring to the table, or how you lead groups, or how you inspire teams, or how you advance the vision of the company, that's great. But to just say like, oh, I'm really passionate about social media, that doesn't do anything for me as a potential employer. Like, that's great. I'm good. I'm happy for you. So that's one like little nuance that I would recommend.
Thank you for specifying that. All right, so we only have about a minute left, so I just want to take this time to say a huge thank you to Amaya for spending your afternoon with our community. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with?
Me?
No.
Yes. I've had a great time. Thank you for all of the questions. I hope that all of you guys can find things that inspire you, that you're passionate about, and that also are rewarding and challenging through these times. Thanks so much for joining me today. It was really rewarding to be part of this, and thanks, Meg, for doing such a great job of hosting.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. I do want to say a special thank you to all of our community members who registered, submitted questions, and also joined us and submitted some amazing questions and comments in the chat today. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us. I do want to call out, I put the links back in the chat about where you can connect with our speaker if you'd like, as well as the link to the page where you can follow Mindbody on PowerToFly, like on our website. So just to reiterate for anybody that maybe didn't hear it at the start, that follow network is a really great thing to be a part of, because it makes sure that you are updated when new roles are posted, when Mindbody is going to participate in an upcoming event. If they have any other updates, you'll get an alert about it. But other than that, it's not something that's going to clutter up your mini feed or fill your inbox with alerts for just random things. So I very, very, very much recommend that you follow Mindbody on PowerToFly if you are at all interested in working for them. It's also a place that the talent advocates like me, like what I used to do for PowerToFly, go to look for suitable candidates for new roles that are posted. So it's a really good way to make sure that your profile stands out and kind of gives you a bit of an edge over other people that might also be interested in Mindbody. So please feel free to check that out. I'm also throwing up the last link in the chat here is where you can check out our upcoming virtual events that we'll be hosting. So thank you so much for spending time with us. Please feel free to check out that link, and hopefully you'll be spending more afternoons or mornings or evenings, whatever you'd like, with PowerToFly. So thanks so much, everybody, and have a great Tuesday. Bye.